Yo, what's up guys, welcome back to another video. This is a reaction to The Ruthless Rise and Fall of California by Casual Scholar. And yeah, California's a place, it's weird for me because I used to think it was like the place to be when I was younger. So if you think of California, and I know it's not just this because it's a massive state, but you'd automatically think of LA, that's just the one. And the more I've looked into LA just alone it's nowhere near as good as I thought. Obviously, it's a place full of fakes and frauds for starters because people are going there sucking up to whoever they can to try and get to the top. But other than that, I guess California as a whole has a lot of problems. I guess in terms of like the nature there, not the nature, the natural disasters like with wildfires and all that, it's not a great place. Earthquakes, I don't know how often they happen there, but there's obviously a high chance of massive earthquakes happening there. But maybe it will get into like more political things or just how it is like the homeless situations in a lot of the places here. But yeah, there's a lot we're going to get into here. But there must have been a point where California, there was a reason why it was so highly it was looked at so highly because of the opportunities, the weather, a lot of things. But yeah, we're going to jump into this. I've reacted to this channel before, and little fun story. He replied to he like commented on one of like my videos that I reacted to of his, and he said he watched my channel before, which is pretty interesting and pretty cool to be honest. But yeah, the video from what I saw last time was really high quality, and I love these sort of style of videos. It's just an interesting look into different parts of the world. But we're going to jump into this. If you want to watch the reaction in your own time, links will be in the description to the video. But yeah, let's jump into this and see. Links are also in the description to my Patreon if you want to see some more of my reactions that I can't post to YouTube. But let's jump into the Ruthless Rise and Fall of California.
In 1848, on a typical January morning in Northern California, James Marshall, who had been leading the construction effort to build a sawmill, walked down toward the American River to inspect the progress. He never expected that what he was to find would forever alter the future of California and even the world.
Gold
Describing
mines?
the event, Marshall stated,
Maybe?
"I reached my hand down and picked it up. It made my heart thump, for I was certain it was gold." In a blink of an eye, hundreds of thousands of people from all over the world would descend into the mountains of
All over the world?
California to wade in the muddy rivers in hopes of finding their own personal fortune. Businessmen set up shops, while others found it more lucrative to start farming in the Central Valley. And before you know it, California became an industrial, agricultural, and technological powerhouse. It went on to give rise to some of the most influential innovations in history, became a global exporter of culture and entertainment, and for a century and a half proved to be the land of opportunity in the nation already known for its opportunity. It was the envy of the world for its state-of-the-art infrastructure, educational prowess, cheap land, and thusly its booming economy. While not absolute for everyone all of the time, California became the easiest place in the world to work hard and be rewarded in what was described as the California dream. Yet for all its glory, for the first time in history, California lost population in 2020.
And aren't they moving to places like, is it Texas? There's a certain state that they're moving to, and they're like making the house prices go up because there's just so many Californians moving. Can't remember where, but I've seen it mentioned in videos before, and I'm pretty sure it's Texas, but I might be wrong.
In what is being called the Great California Exodus. For the last 2 decades, hundreds of thousands have left the Golden State, and it's starting to accelerate. A vast majority of them cite California's cost of living. To buy a basic single-family home, Californians need at least 7 times the median income. Half of all residents in Los Angeles County spend 50% or more of their paycheck just for rent. And it's not just workers leaving. Hundreds of large companies, including titans like Oracle, HP, and Tesla, have or are moving out, taking with them tens of thousands of high-paying jobs as a result of California's hostile business environment. Indeed, despite its gargantuan economy, which would rank it 5th in the world if it was an independent.
That is crazy that California has more than a country like India, that with the population that it has, it's so wild, and obviously more than the UK. And the UK is a well-off country. So the fact that California has a higher GDP is mental. But I assume a lot of it comes from the fact that there's companies that, like, for example, Silicon Valley, and the companies that are all like spread around. I don't know if it's actually represented by the people in terms of like their revenues, but overall the GDP being that high is insane.
Independent country, if you adjust California's median income with cost of living and taxes, you'll find in actuality it's not nearly as rich as you might have suspected. Having the second highest cost of living, only being beaten out by Hawaii, it's no wonder why California has the highest percentage of its population living in poverty, and even half of the entire homeless population of the United States. So how did California become so incredibly rich in the first place, only for it to become unlivable for most of its inhabitants? This is a story of the rise and fall of the California dream.
Look at the editing though. God damn.
This video is sponsored by War Thunder.
Getting his money. It's good to see as well. Good to see.
California in 1848 was nothing like it is today. It was an official territory of Mexico, but was being occupied by the United States during the Mexican-American War. Despite its massive size and mostly ideal weather, it was sparsely populated by only 150,000 people, of which just 4.5% were non-Native American. James Marshall's discovery of gold would change all of this, quickly unleashing the largest migration in the history of the United States. In total, over 300,000 people came, not just from the United States, but from China, South America, Australia,
How would they have even found out in these times that there was gold in California?
and Europe. To all of these new arrivals, San Francisco became the port and gateway to the gold riches, and thus its population exploded, from just 200 in 1848 to 37,000 a mere 5 years later. Gold mining became so lucrative that San Francisco's port started to be dominated by abandoned ships as crews and captains alike decided to try their luck in finding gold. To keep up with the massive demand, a vibrant and booming economy sprang up, for which the miners would spend their newfound wealth. This included the rise of many new towns and cities to further help supply the growing needs of the gold rush. In fact, at one point, demand for beef was so great that 60,000 longhorns were herded all the way from Texas, and soon, Southern California became the largest producer of dairy and meat in the nation. Indeed, California also had a lot of geographical advantages. Its Central Valley, with its rich soil and ideal climate, proved to have significant potential in agriculture. While limited at first due to difficulties finding enough water, by utilizing winter wheat, California became the largest producer by 1890. Along with this, its massive coastline was perfect for trading, especially with Asia, and also allowed for a robust fishing industry to take root. This unprecedented economic and population growth enabled California to bypass the status of territory, becoming a full-fledged state by 1850, even being allowed to choose its own boundaries. The new government, flush with cash, started to take on much-needed infrastructure projects, and heavily invested in education, instituting a near-universal school education along with the construction of its first universities. While the gold eventually dried up, California was presented with another massive boost to its economy. Work started in 1863 on the Central Pacific Rail Line, and just 6 years later, it joined with the Union Pacific Line in Utah. California was now directly connected with the rest of the US, resulting in lower overall prices, increased profits for industries, and accelerated population growth. At the same time, clever marketing by the railroad and tourism industries successfully sold California as a healthy, comfortable, and cheap place to live, resulting in a real estate boom.
How
Those that
times
did not plan-
have changed. That is so wild. Obviously, this is what 150 years ago, maybe even more than that, to be honest. But it's just crazy how quickly things change. They're like promoting it, saying it's cheap to live here, and then because I guess there's so many advantages to living here, so many people moved, and over time people have continued moving for different reasons, and then it's hit a point where it's completely flipped. And I don't know how it actually is. Like, say any of you watching this video from California, whether you're from San Francisco, San Diego, LA, wherever you're from in California, how bad is it? Is it worse in places like LA compared to San Diego, or is it just consistent throughout the whole state where it's just like the same problems, the same price issues and cost of living? situations.
Plan to live in California became tourists to see its immense natural beauty. By the turn of the 20th century, California was starting to dominate U.S. economic expansion. By the year 1900, California's population had increased by 13-fold, and it showed no signs of slowing down. Yet a few key factors would take California from a regional to a global power. The first was the discovery of large reserves of easily accessible oil near Los Angeles in the San Joaquin Valley. Kerosene was rapidly replacing whale oil for lighting. Oil was becoming a necessity for lubrication in the blossoming machine age, and the rise of the automobile made the nation parched for gasoline. As such, a major oil industry took shape, and by 1903, California became the leading producer in the nation, pumping out 4 million barrels annually. At the same time, new innovations in film were rapidly growing the industry. However, the technology to film these new movies had patents on them, mostly owned by Thomas Edison, who was headquartered in New York. As such, many film companies then wanted to get as far away as possible, in hopes of secretly getting away with not having to pay royalties. Southern California's varied terrain, year-round sunshine, growing talent pool, and being about as far from New York as you could possibly
The shady beginnings of Hollywood, which is still a very shady place today.
get, became the new ideal destination. As a result, the Hollywood film industry was born, bringing in huge amounts of cash while also projecting California's allure in culture domestically and eventually around the world. But the continued population boom of California soon required the state to start shaping nature. The cities in the Central Valley were starting to run out of water. To remedy this, many extensive water projects costing billions of dollars started redirecting large amounts of water. This included the Central Valley Project, the Los Angeles Aqueduct, and many other endeavors, which brought much-needed water from the mountains and rivers to the farmlands and the cities. This not only enabled the capacity for many more residents, but also transformed California's heartland into the most productive agricultural region in the United States. Along with these projects came mass investment into more railroads and a sprawling highway system.
So at this point, literally everything that's going right is going right. Didn't know there was going to be an agricultural side to like somewhere in California. I just didn't think it would be possible. But the fact that that's even being mentioned is literally making me think everything that could go right was going right. I wonder the point where it did start to go wrong. Maybe from the Depression, or I don't know, the 70s or 80s. I don't know what sort of event it would have caused, but surely there was like a big event where then it sort of flipped the switch and everyone, or not everyone, but maybe it was a slow burner because everyone was moving there and slowly the possibilities were going up slower and then more people were moving up, and then it hit a point where there was less opportunities but there was more people, and then I guess from there it went tits up, but
boosting industrial growth even further. Yet California would get lucky once again. In the early to mid 20th century, California's strategic location gave rise to huge military investment. Ideal weather brought training facilities and airfields, and the rise of Japan as a military threat led to new naval ports and large-scale shipyards. World War II saw a skyrocketing of these needs, and California became a military-industrial powerhouse. Emerging from the war, California continued its role, attracting 25% of the entire Department of Defense's contracts and 40% of the military's research contracts.
And that is money.
This was especially true for the aerospace industry, which continued to be a major supplier of employment and economic stimulus, later being accelerated due to the Cold War with the Soviet Union. Yet maybe most important to California's role in the world was its prowess in lower and higher education. From its inception, California funded near universal basic education. By the 1930s, it was a trendsetter in education beyond elementary schools, being a leader in the high school movement. This, combined with the port of San Francisco, Stanford University, and nearby Moffett Field, led to the Bay Area becoming the epicenter of research and development.
Look at this picture. This looks beautiful, man. God damn, that is a crazy, crazy view.
For radio and aerospace. But Stanford would go on to heavily encourage its students to commercialize their ideas and seek venture capital, in what would become the birth of Silicon Valley. At the same time, California adopted the Master Plan for Higher Education. it started spending huge amounts of money to build the largest community college system in the nation, dramatically increased the capacity for undergraduate institutions, and higher education became free, enabling 50% of high school graduates to enroll in college. As a
Wow.
result, the educational system churned out ideas and talent in which Silicon Valley was able to put to use. Quickly, investment, the amount of talent, and thusly innovation started spewing out from the region, giving rise to the transistor, integrated circuits, the precursor to the modern internet, the microprocessor, and eventually some of the largest companies ever created, including HP, Intel, Google, Oracle, Apple, Tesla, and many others.
That is crazy to think this all came from this state. And I guess it is to do with the whole system of school and how it was made free and get people had more opportunities and stuff. Man, it's crazy how things happen like that. Because imagine, maybe it wasn't free. Maybe some of these things wouldn't have been created. I guess there'd be other different creations that are similar, but small things like that change big things in the future. I feel like one small difference and it could have been completely different. That's how I sort of view it, but maybe not. I don't know.
California, and specifically Silicon Valley, became the global home of technological innovation, generating obscene amounts of cash. It has attracted the most talented minds from all over the world and is the reason you are able to watch this very video. California in the 20th century had firmly cemented itself as one of, if not the most influential pieces of land in the entire world. Incomes were high, jobs were plentiful, and homes were affordable. If you had any semblance of a work ethic or a novel idea, chances were you could live a comfortable life in California. While it was never absolute and often not equal, California during this golden age was unrivaled in its opportunities for everyday people. Venice Beach is one of the most iconic places in all of California.
Damn straight. I mean, I know this beach purely because of GTA. So this place has memories in my heart. Like, I swear I just remember this whole row. Where's the skate park? Where's the tennis courts? Is that actually real, by the way? Is there a skate park on Venice Beach somewhere along here? And is there like tennis courts on this sort of somewhere along here? Because you've got the pier this side, I think. The pier's this side. You got the skate park somewhere. If you play GTA, you'll know. But I guess some of it's probably overdone, but I do know Venice Beach because of GTA.
Yeah, and its famed boardwalk is one of the most popular tourist destinations in the entire world. Yet the population calling this area home has decreased by 20% from 1960 to 2010. During that same period, the population of the Los Angeles metro area has increased by 91%. How did one of the most desirable areas on Earth lose population when the surrounding area itself had almost doubled? What once started as a working-class neighborhood in the 1960s has been transformed by a years-long battle by homeowners to make Venice even less dense than before, successfully implementing egregious building quotas and restrictions. Starting in the 1970s, Los Angeles decentralized decision-making to citizen advisory committees. This allowed a narrow faction of wealthy homeowners to warp regulations to favor single-family homes, discourage further construction, and contest the building of denser and more affordable apartment buildings. They did this in an effort to retain what they already had: quiet, single-family neighborhoods, which also had the benefit of greatly increasing their home prices. Not only this, but California's notorious environmentalism, which makes the state the most regulated in the country, if not the world, increase costs and decrease supply. To make it even worse, a law which fixes the growth of property taxes forced the state to shift the burden onto home builders, resulting in the state having the highest construction impact fees in the nation. As a result, since 1960, the average home value in Venice has increased from $20,000 to almost $2.5 million. And
Mate, imagine you invested in a home before that boom. Oh my days.
Not only happened in Venice, but to the entirety of California, the consequences of which have been widespread. The state is now short close to 4 million houses. It has the second lowest home ownership rate, the second highest median home prices, and thus the highest poverty rate when adjusted for cost of living. But this has affected more than home prices. As the population boomed and prices rose, the more affordable and dense apartment complexes were pushed to the poor neighborhoods. As a result, segregation along race and class accelerated, while shoving more children into the most overcrowded and underfunded schools. Zip code education, as it's called, has dramatically deteriorated what was once an envied educational system. If you are rich, you can choose to live and be enrolled in any school. If you are poor, you will be forced to receive education from the most neglected schools. California now has the worst student-to-teacher ratio in the nation, the 10th worst K-12 educational performance, and the 15th highest dropout rate. This, of course, is better than it appears, as the schools in rich areas bring up the state's averages.
Wow. I mean, I can't talk much because my school was just as bad. My school, when I was there, was going through absolute hell. So I had experienced substitute teachers after substitute teachers. We would have lessons where there was no teacher and all this stuff. So I can relate to that. But the fact that this state was, the pride of it was the fact that the education system and the ability to allow people to get the best opportunities was there. And now it's completely changed, you know. So yeah, it's changed for the worse. But I guess because there's so many people there, there's nothing else that can be done.
The result is a massive reduction in social mobility. Poor Californians today receive a much lower standard of education, and when combined with the hyperinflated cost of living, this means their chances of climbing the socioeconomic ladder are lower than ever before. It makes sense now why 53% of Californians are considering leaving, according to an Edelman intelligence survey. Yet this is just the beginning of California's economic woes. Starting with the end of the Cold War in 1991, California's military and adjacent supply chain industries took a massive hit. This, along with the overarching trend of American companies moving manufacturing jobs overseas, meant California was starting to no longer be the employment factory it once was. Since then, it has persistently had a higher unemployment rate than the rest of the United States, specifically hurting blue-collar and middle-class populations. The highest paying jobs are those in Silicon Valley, which has never been a substantial provider of jobs. Therefore, income inequality has steadily increased at a rate higher than the rest of the nation. And today, California stands as the fourth most unequal state.
That's what I was thinking. Like, the GDP obviously is so high, but it's gonna be because of such a small percentage of the people or the companies. But then in actuality, there's gonna be so much poverty there because the jobs, the ability to get high paying jobs or whatever maybe isn't there. Like you mentioned, the school system isn't as good for people who could come from humble beginnings or whatever, you know.
This economic reality facilitated a change in policy, where the government started to increase the taxes levied on businesses and the highest income earners. The money could then be funneled to the education system, infrastructure, and economic safety nets for the less fortunate. In fact, California spends more on healthcare and welfare than any other state by a wide margin.
Oh, wow.
This, of course, is not necessarily a bad thing, and is very logical in nature. The problem is the extent to which taxes and regulations have been increased. In a survey of 383 CEOs by Chief Executive Magazine, ranking states on how business-friendly they are, California ranks dead last. Forbes ranked it almost at the bottom for regulations and business costs.
So for a place that's ranked last for that and has all these big companies there, I'm assuming there's going to be a massive jump and all these companies are going to leave. He mentioned some are already leaving, but if all of them leave, then I can't imagine the spot that will put people that live here without that extra income support, you know?
In a survey of corporate attorneys assessing the fairness of liability systems, California ranked 48th. Its 8.84% state corporate income flat tax is one of the highest in the nation, and it's not just companies being burdened. California has the highest state income tax for its ultra-high income earners at 13.3%. When combined with the federal rate of 37%, those in the top 1% are likely seeing close to 50% of their incomes taken by taxes. Of course, many of you think this is justified.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, if you're earning 25 million, I'm sure 12.5 million will do you. Or if you're earning 2 million, I'm sure 1 million will do you. Like, if you're earning that high amount of money, you're gonna be fine. It's people getting taxed when they're not even able to pay their bills that you should worry about. I mean, come on now.
And indeed, it might be. However, even if it is, this is creating a major problem. The top 0.5% of income earners in California now represents 40% of the state's tax revenue.
And also the real issue is, because obviously different states have different rules, people will see that, or companies will see that, and they'll just move to another state. Obviously, it's different in other countries like the UK. I'm almost certain that the taxes that you're going to get, it's not going to change no matter where you live in the UK. Obviously, the cost of living will change. Like if you live in London, you have to spend more to rent stuff and buy food and all that. But you also get a higher average wage because you have to pay more money to live where you live. So all that's the case. But in the US, it's harder because you've got a state that's next to LA or next to California, and they're just going to move there. Half the price, still the same business for them. It doesn't make a difference.
Revenue which props up most of the state's needs. Yet with many other states providing very low or no state income tax and little regulations, there now stands a huge incentive for those that support the whole system to move out. Historically though, California's large tech companies and workers have stayed because you just needed to be in the area to stay connected with the rapidly changing industry. It was hard to find qualified workers elsewhere, and the cost to get up and move out of state was great. The pandemic has started to change this. No longer do you need workers to be in the office. No longer do you need to be close to others to network. And with the rise of other regional tech hubs like Austin, Texas, it's not as hard to find skilled workers elsewhere. California's comparative advantages are steadily decreasing with technology, while at the same time, it's actively threatening to raise taxes further. Businesses are now finding they're able to create much more value for shareholders, generate higher profits, and find high-quality workers for cheaper outside of California. Subsequently, in 2016 alone, 1,800 companies left, and today the state is losing about 12 major company headquarters every month. As they leave, they crucially take away billions of dollars of state tax revenue, which is needed to support the growing impoverished population, the worsening educational system, and crumbling infrastructure projects that have been neglected since their construction. Worse yet, a large majority of state revenue is built off the back of capital gains. As California stares down the barrel of a recession and the ensuing stock sell-off, these revenues are likely to be taken away precisely when the economy needs it most. California now finds itself in a catch-22. As the economy increasingly becomes unequal, the voter demand to increase taxes on the wealthy does too. As these taxes increase, more companies and wealthy individuals leave, taking with them much-needed tax revenue, and thus the cycle repeats. Yet running for office on the promise to cut taxes or spending proves to be political suicide, as candidates running to spend and tax more win out. It appears then that California, its leaders, and its population are likely to realize this problem after it's already too late. California and the rise of its mighty economy came down to successive economic booms, from the gold rush to Silicon Valley. Today's boom of technology, however, has led to fewer jobs and higher income inequality. As the state has pivoted to account for this, it has found itself in a situation where it's destroying the very thing that sustains it, its ability to create innovation and attract talent from all over the world. Coupled with homeowners waging a war that has skyrocketed prices and pushed children into overcrowded schools, the once glorious California dream of working hard and being rewarded is starting to erode. Despite this, California will likely continue to dominate the global economy, just with diminishing magnitude. In the meantime, however, the ensuing economic and social burden will fall on the middle and lower classes. All that glitters is not gold, especially when you're poor in the Golden State.
It's rough, man. It looks like it's going to be a
Don't forget to play
a rough time for the people of California. I'm from San Diego, born and raised. The only reason I can continue to live in California is because my parents bought 2 properties while real estate was reasonably priced. For example, my dad bought a 3-bedroom condo for $30,000 in '74. Now the same property is worth $600,000. To put that into perspective, $30,000 was a little above my dad's annual salary when he bought it. $600,000 is like 8 to 9 times my annual salary. It's a lot. I inherited the place and never had to pay any of that. I'm now paying $400 in HOA, I don't know what that is, fees a month, and $50 a month in property tax, another $150 in utilities. That is crazy though, that you have to still spend this much just to live in the house when you already own it. I consider myself very lucky. So many people out there struggling. You've been put in a good situation, so that is lucky for you. But it's crazy to see how much the prices have changed. I've loved to have been born into money, man. Like it just changes everything. Being born into money, your life's just different. You know, it's just so different. The worries and fears are just not there. Oh, it's a different world. But yeah, this is an interesting watch. If you're from California, let me know your opinions on this, and if it's worse than it seems. But yeah, it's not looking good, bruv. I'm not gonna lie. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed, and until next time, like, subscribe, and peace.